Hello, humans of the internet. How are you all doing today? Um, we are trying this streaming to Facebook thing again. So if you're watching this on Facebook, we've had a few technical difficulties the last few days, but hopefully today it's going to work, and Adam's trick is going to have saved the day. That'd be great. We are currently reading The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. We are just past halfway through. I'm reading a chapter twice a week, one chapter twice a week, so 2 chapters a week on Mondays and Fridays, which for a lot of you, if you are not in New Zealand, is probably Sundays and Thursdays. But I live in the future, so it's Friday in New Zealand right now. If you missed yesterday's stream, I would really love you to go and watch the VOD of yesterday's stream, because I read one of my own stories and it's one that I'm really quite fond of. It's probably not my best story ever, but I like it a lot. And I would be curious to know what people's opinions of it are, because it's kind of a mindfuck, or at least that's how it was intended. But for today, we're going to join Dorothy, who just melted a witch, and is going to attempt to rescue her friends. So, we are on chapter 13, and this chapter is called The Rescue. By the way, if you're watching this on Facebook, before I start, if you're watching this on Facebook, fucked up Thomas the Tank Engine. Yep, that's pretty much it. Except you just spoiled the story, because you shouldn't realize until about halfway through that I'm fucking with Thomas the Tank Engine. That's why I didn't say that, but it's okay. If you are watching this on Facebook and you're watching it on the Sparrowbell page, on the original post, and you comment on it, I can see your comments on my awesome chat stream. I don't know if it comes up here. Only the Twitch ones might come up here, but I can see the Facebook ones. So feel free to give me your thoughts as we go, because I will be giving you mine. Here we go. Chapter 13, The Rescue. Yes, just like that. The Cowardly Lion was much pleased. Oh, look, it does show up on the thing. That's awesome. Cool. All right. Sorry. I'm going to start this now, for reals. The Cowardly Lion was much pleased to hear that the Wicked Witch had been melted by a bucket of water, and Dorothy at once unlocked the gate of his prison and set him free. They went in together to the castle, where Dorothy's first act was to call all the Winkies together and tell them that they were no longer slaves. There was great rejoicing among the yellow Winkies, for they had been made to work hard during many years for the Wicked Witch, who had always treated them with great cruelty. They kept this day as a holiday, then and ever after, and spent the time in feasting and dancing. If our friends, the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman, were only with us, said the Lion, I should be quite happy. Don't you suppose we could rescue them? Asked the girl anxiously. We could try, answered the Lion. So they called the yellow Winkies and asked them if they would help to rescue their friends, and the Winkies said that they would be delighted to do all in their power for Dorothy, who had set them free from bondage. So she chose a number of the Winkies who looked as if they knew the most. How does someone look like they know the most? That's just silly. And they all started away. You can't tell how smart someone is by looking at them. FYI, in case you were wondering. They travelled that day and part of the next until they came to the rocky plain, where the Tin Woodman lay, all battered and bent. What are you laughing at? What is he laughing at? Are you being 12? I don't know what he's laughing at. All right, sorry. They travelled that day and part of the next until they came to the rocky plain where the Tin Woodman lay, all battered and bent. His axe was near him, but the blade was rusted and the handle broken off short. The Winkies lifted him tenderly in their arms and carried him back to the yellow castle again. Dorothy shedding a few tears by the way at the sad plight of her old friend, and the Lion looking sober and sorry. When they reached the castle, Dorothy said to the Winkies, Are any of your people tinsmiths? Oh, yes, some of us are very good tinsmiths, they told her. Then bring them to me, she said. And when the tinsmiths came, bringing with them all their tools and baskets, she inquired, Can you straighten out those dents on the Tin Woodman, and bend him back into shape again, and solder him together where he is broken? The tinsmiths looked the Woodman over carefully, and then answered that they thought they could mend him so he would be as good as ever. So they set to work in one of the big yellow rooms of the castle, and worked for 3 days and 4 nights, hammering and twisting and bending and soldering and polishing and pounding at the legs and body and head of the Tin Woodman, until at last he was straightened out into his old form, and his joints worked as well as ever. To be sure, there were several patches on him, but the tinsmiths did a good job, and as the woodman was not a vain man, he did not mind the patches at all. Chicks dig scars. When it sorry, that's terrible, but he wants a heart because he wants to go and marry his girl again, or he wants to love his girl so he can marry her again, and having some scars is a good thing. When at last he walked into Dorothy's room and thanked her for rescuing him, he was so pleased that he wept tears of joy, and Dorothy had to wipe every tear carefully from his face with her apron so his joints would not be rusted. At the same time, her own tears fell thick and fast at the joy of meeting her old friend again, and these tears did not need to be wiped away. As for the lion, he wiped his eyes so often with the tip of his tail that it became quite wet, and he was obliged to go out into the courtyard and hold it in the sun until it dried. How manly of him. If we only had the Scarecrow with us again, said the Tin Woodman, when Dorothy had finished telling him everything that had happened, I should be quite happy. Here is a picture of the tinsmiths soldering and ironing and whatevering the Tin Man to make him whole again. We must try to find him, said the girl. So she called the Winkies to help her, and they walked all that day and part of the next until they came to the tall tree in the branches of which the winged monkeys had tossed the Scarecrow's clothes. It was a very tall tree, and the trunk was so smooth that no one could climb it. But the Woodman said at once, I'll chop it down, and then we can get the Scarecrow's clothes. The conservationist in me is not okay with this. I'm pretty sure you could climb that tree if you tried hard enough. Now, while the tinsmiths had been at work mending the Woodman himself, another of the Winkies, who was a goldsmith, had made an axe handle of solid gold and fitted it to the woodsman's axe, instead of the old broken handle. Gold is soft. Gold is soft. That's a bad idea. Others polished the blade until all the rust was removed and it glistened like burnished silver. As soon as he had spoken, the Tin Woodman began to chop, and in a short time the tree fell over with a crash, when the Scarecrow's clothes fell out of the branches and rolled off on the ground. Dorothy picked them up, and had the Winkies carry them back to the castle, where they were stuffed with nice clean straw, and behold, here was the Scarecrow as good as ever, thanking them over and over again for saving him. I have many thoughts on this, but we'll get to that in a minute. Now they were reunited. Dorothy and her friends spent a few happy days at the Yellow Castle, where they found everything they needed to make them comfortable. But one day the girl thought of Aunt Em and said, We must go back to Oz and claim his promise. Yes, said the Woodman. At last I shall get my heart. That was pretty much exactly what I was thinking. Write that. The clothes make the man. That's his whole identity, is just his clothes. You can stuff them with anything at any time, take all the stuffing out, and then put new stuffing in, and it's still the same guy. Identity is weird in this book. Anyway, we must go back to Oz and claim his promise. Yes, said the Woodman. At last I shall get my heart. And I shall get my brains, added the Scarecrow joyfully. And I shall get my courage, said the Lion thoughtfully. And I shall get back to Kansas, cried Dorothy, clapping her hands. Oh, let us start for the Emerald City tomorrow. This they decided to do. The next day they called the Winkies together and bade them goodbye. The Winkies were sorry to have them go, and they had grown so fond of the Tin Woodman that they begged him to stay and rule over them in the yellow land of the West. Finding they were determined to go, the Winkies gave Toto and the Lion each a golden collar, and to Dorothy they presented a beautiful bracelet, studded with diamonds. Grandpa's broom style? What? Is that like Theseus's ship? Same thing. Finding they were determined to go, the Winkies gave Toto and the Lion each a golden collar, and to Dorothy they presented a beautiful bracelet studded with diamonds, and to the Scarecrow they gave a gold-headed walking stick to keep him from stumbling, and to the Tin Woodman they offered a silver oil can inlaid with gold and set with precious jewels. They sure have a lot of gold, these guys. Every one of the travellers made the Winkies a pretty speech in return, and all shook hands with them till their arms ached. Dorothy went to the witch's cupboard to fill her basket with food for the journey, and there she saw the golden cap. She tried it on her own head and found that it fitted her exactly. She did not know anything about the charm of the golden cap, but she saw that it was pretty, so she made up her mind to wear it and carry her sunbonnet in the basket. Then, being prepared for the journey, they all started for the Emerald City, and the Winkies gave them 3 cheers and many good wishes to carry with them. That's the end of the chapter. Had the broom for 37 years, replaced the handle 7 times and the head 3 times, but it's still the same broom. Yeah, it's the same as Theseus's ship. There's a philosophical thought experiment called Theseus's ship, which is a similar principle. Like if you switch out all the how does it work? If Theseus brings his ship to the shipmaker and says, I want you to replace all the wood and all the everything, and the shipmaker gradually over a period of time replaces every piece of his ship with a new piece of wood or a new piece of whatever the ship is made out of, and then he takes all the bits that he took from Theseus' ship and builds a different ship out of them, which one is Theseus' ship? And it's a similar thing as the Scarecrow is apparently just his clothes, as long as you put enough straw in him. Although presumably his face is like also part of his clothes. It must be, right? He must have like a painted, yeah. So they just take the stuffing out of him. Anyway, that was a short chapter. I don't know if we want to do another one. What do we think? Anyone have an opinion? On whether we should do another chapter or just leave it there for next time. Also, you guys need to start thinking about what book you would like to see me read next, because we're going to get through this one pretty quickly. You learned something new about Theseus' ship? It's a whole thing to do with like identity and what whether a thing is itself based on what it's made out of, or whether a thing is itself because of the attributes given to it, or possession, or whatever. See, I would argue the new ship is Theseus' ship, and the old ship is like the shipmaker's ship, because the concept of Theseus' ship assumes the ship belonging to Theseus. When you buy a new car, it's your car. The old car is no longer your car. Same. But people have argued the opposite. Scarecrow face usually made out of a sack. Yeah, I'm just assuming that the face sack was also up in the tree with the clothes, I guess. And the only thing that had been taken out was all the straw. Somehow the face is super, like, important to me in terms of his identity.